Welcome to The Part-Time CEO, a podcast about building a business whilst navigating everything else life brings with it. I'm Louise Stevens, a marketing strategist and business mentor. Before starting my own business, I spent nearly 9 years working at Australia's largest travel retailer, starting in retail travel sales before moving into recruitment and talent management, where the team I was part of was recognised with a National ARIE Award. That experience shaped how I think about people, communication, and connection. Today, I work with service-based business owners to grow their visibility and attract the right clients without falling into the trap of doing more, pushing harder, and losing balance along the way. That's what this podcast is about. Before we dive in, I've created a free resource for you. It's a simple visual of what I call the client attraction method, a way of approaching visibility and growth that actually works long term. You can download it via the link in the show notes. Now, let's get into today's episode. 5 podcast myths busted, and what I'd actually like to tell you instead. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Part-Time CEO podcast. I am your host, I'm Lou, and as always, I'm really incredibly excited to be here and of course grateful that you are here listening, because it's all good me talking about, things in business, things in life, sharing my network. But if there's no one here to listen, then that would be a really sad case of affairs. Anyway, moving on to today's episode, talking about our podcast myths. So I host a podcast, of course, and I encourage other women, potentially like you, to think about hosting your own show as well. Now, if you've listened to any previous episodes, you might know my story. You might know that I don't recommend everyone go ahead and launch their own podcast. I talk about this from a place of if you are thinking about it, if you're curious, or you know you want to, but you're just not too sure what steps you should take. If you don't want to, then I'm the first to tell you, don't. There are plenty of other ways out there in the online world or in the content world to be able to share your message, share your expertise, introduce others to your network, and do good. So, but for me, this was an avenue that I chose to go down. I hesitated. You may or may not know that launching a podcast, I was adamant I would never do, simply because the gurus out there said that you must. And I said, I don't have to do anything, which is why I don't endorse going ahead and doing anything forcefully. I believe it is about looking at the bigger picture. It's about asking yourself how you want to show up in this world and what is the best platform for you to be able to do it. Now, in today's episode, we are talking about myths busted. And what I would like to tell you instead. So 5 years ago, I can't believe it's been 5 years, I launched season 1 of this podcast, which was called Strategize to Monetize, where I shared lots of my own marketing strategies, as well as had lots of guests on in the marketing space to share theirs. And it was great. I loved it. And then that season ended after about 10 episodes. Life happened in between, and here we are back. And I actually can't remember what episode we're up to, but I know we've got a few under the belt now, which is fantastic. We are on a roll. Now, 5 years ago to today, podcasting is in a very different space. However, there are still some very key messages that are pushed upon people thinking about launching a podcast, or people who have launched a podcast and now they're looking at ways to grow their audience. Some of the core messages have changed, but there are a few that are very prevalent, and there's also a couple new ones that have come up along the way, which I want to have a chat about, and why I believe that they aren't necessary. I'm going to debunk those myths. So myth number 1 is you have to start a podcast. So I've just shared with you about why I chose not to for a very long time. So it must have been about 7 years ago, podcasting became like the next big thing. So if you think about how big reels have become, threads, um, trending music, they're all things that are quite relevant today that are quite big in the online space and encouraged for creators and business users and even people just, having fun on social media to use. So 7 years ago, that was podcasting. If you didn't have a podcast, you were falling behind and your business was going to severely suffer. Now, I heard that message loud and clear, and I kind of laughed at it and I said, no one can tell me that I'm going to fall behind based on one piece of content strategy. So that is myth number one. And my debunking of that is no, you do not have to start that podcast if you don't want to. So, how you know if podcasting is for you is, I guess, if you're interested in it in the first place. So, you might see other people talking about podcasting, you might listen to podcasting, you might just prefer, listening or interacting with people's energy, faces, and voices. If you like doing video in your social media marketing, you potentially will like podcasting as well as a great strategy. If you prefer the written word, then blogging is probably your space. Podcasting to me is kind of like a verbal way of blogging. I like it because I just talk, the words come out. I do some editing to remove some of the words, but it just flows much more naturally, and I don't overanalyze anything like I do when it comes to writing, even though we've got AI now. Another reason why you might like podcasting is potentially other people in your network, your business network, like the same format. You've had a few conversations about how you're thinking of starting one, maybe some of the expertise or some of the lessons you've learned, and people in your network resonate with that. And they think, cool, you should share that, or we could do that together. That's a little bit of a theme. And ultimately, I guess it's a way that you feel really aligns with you and the way in which you like to connect with your audience. Because at the end of the day, when you run a business, we are using these platforms, whether we promote it or not, to grow our audience, get more eyeballs on how it is that we help people, talk about how we help people, talk about the problems we solve, the solutions we have, and encourage people to learn more about us, follow along for our tips and for our advice, as well as opt in to any offers that we might have available, whether they be free or whether they be a program or one-on-one work or etc. Right? So when you're thinking about it from a business point of view, things like podcasting make sense. Now, it is also, now 7 years ago, this wasn't the case. Platforms like Instagram and Facebook now, they are SEO orientated. So you can Google and, that business page can come up. But 7 years ago, that wasn't the case, but podcasting was. So if someone goes in and types one of the keywords into the search engine that your podcast is linked to, it's got the opportunity to pop up and for somebody via Google to be able to listen to it, right? So there's lots of different ways that you can use podcasting to grow your audience. It is also a different audience to online platforms. So yes, the chances are that the people who listen to podcasts are also on social media, but they might not be coming across your business page. They might not be interested in following business pages. They might purely be using social media for social and growing their business in a different way, or they could be, you finding services that you offer in a different way. So it's a different type of touch point that you can reach different people and talk about what you know, right? Which is pretty awesome to think that there are people out there all across the world that can come across your podcast episode and hear it. On social media platforms, they do become very geographically linked, right? If you go into your insights, you can see where the majority of your followers or people that engage are coming from. Most of the time, unless you're doing paid advertising to different parts of the world, they are quite local to where you are, or the areas that you currently work with. So I know for me, if I go into my insights, New Zealand is top of the pops, then there is Australia. They are the two countries that my clients, that I work with for clients. They're also a very similar time zone. So therefore, when I'm posting, they're not generally asleep. Whereas in the US or on the other side of the world, they could be. So it makes the geographical barrier much less challenging or more open. I guess it's not really a challenge, but it becomes more open. And listeners from all around the world have got the opportunity to come across and find you, and then maybe come along and follow you on social media if that's what they want to do. Or not, they might just continue listening to your podcast, which is great. So podcasting for me has never been about doing something because I was told to do it, because I have to do it. It should never be like that for you too. It should simply come from a place where it aligns with the way in which, you like connecting with people, the way that you like sharing your words of wisdom, your expertise, and the way that you like people to be able to connect with you. I guess those are the things that I would encourage you to think about if you're thinking about starting a podcast. Now, myth number 2 is that you have to record it as a video. So I know that a lot of women in business have got a thing about putting themselves out there, and they've got an even bigger thing about putting themselves out there on video. And I know that because I work with lots of them. For myself, I was like that, but not to the extent where a lot of my clients are at and where you might be at. Now, the reason for that, I guess, is I was very heavily driven by my why, and why I was happy to put myself out there and push past any fear or any concerns I had about being seen. Whereas a lot of the women I work with, they've got a really big barrier for them. We work on that and they work on that outside of working with me. But I guess, putting themselves out there, whether that be like their face in a photo, whether that's doing a live video, a recorded video, or even a podcast, that's a really big thing, and it's a big fear, and it's very relevant. So if you have that same fear, please know that you are not alone. So the good thing about podcasting is that you don't have to record it like video, on video, like you may be watching this or listening to this right now. So again, if we rewind back to a few years ago, podcasting was only audio. Then podcasting hosts started recording those live so that people could listen to the audio, but they could also watch the video if that's what they wanted to do. And they used the video of it for marketing for people to listen to the audio. Now, as of today, and I'm not too sure when this came about, this is something that changed since my season 1 and season 2, is that you can record it as a video and you upload it into your host, where the audio is dispatched onto, platforms like Apple, like Spotify, but also you can upload the video as well so that people can also watch if they would prefer to listen and tune in that way. However, you don't have to do the video. If you only want to do the audio, then you only do the audio, right? You may decide that your first season is going to be audio only, but then you might decide that you want to do more video in the future. You might decide that your solo episodes are going to be audio, but when you've got guests on, you'll do them as videos. You get to decide how you want to do your show. And yes, there are pros and cons to doing both audio and video, but at the end of the day, you putting your podcast out there is the number one thing that should be your focus. Number 2 thing is how you can get more, grow your audience, and how you can get them to engage more with how you're presenting your podcast. So if audio is what you are happy to commit to at the start, then I say stick with audio, get your podcast out there, and then start working your way into different strategies to connect more with people and to grow the audience so that you can help more people. Now, myth number 3 is that you need fancy equipment and a podcast room. So you don't need this either. So I know another barrier is investing in podcasting. Again, back in the day, yeah, everyone came out, they had like the specific podcast headphones, they have a special microphone, they would do up their room so that it looked all, established. Even though back in the day you couldn't see anything, people still had podcasting rooms. Now, you don't need the fancy equipment. I'm simply recording this on Zoom with my Apple AirPods in my dining room. Now, if I wanted to use my microphone, I could do that. However, through trial and error, I have realized that the microphone with my Apple AirPods is just as useful. And I prefer to have these in because it cancels the noise out around me and it helps me stay more focused, as opposed to having them out and talking into a mic. I also find when I have a mic that I feel like I'm about to start doing karaoke and no one needs to hear me singing on this podcast, right? So when it comes to having a dedicated room, you can do that if you've got the space in your house. If you've got an office that you want to, set up and make it look really professional for your podcast, then you can totally go ahead and do that. But what is crucial when you're recording your podcast is that you have got a silent room because microphones will pick up lots of different noise. So I know for me, sometimes my dogs will start barking. There is every chance that one is about to start barking very soon because I can see her walking around outside. Now, the microphone will pick that up and then your audience will hear it. I know in one of my episodes, I can hear my dogs barking. It's very faint. But if you don't want those distractions for your audience and for you, then sit in a quiet room and fairly soundproof, and and then you won't have those problems. I am also okay with those noises because it's really important to me that this podcast comes across as real as I am a human, right? Because I encourage people to launch podcasts, women to launch podcasts, I want to make this look as easy and real and seamless and authentic as possible. If I all of a sudden go from sitting in my dining room with my Apple earphones to something else, which is like 10 times more professional than I've ever been in my life, then that to me doesn't feel relatable and it won't feel achievable for many wanting to launch and grow a podcast. So, in 100 years' time, when I am the oldest living woman around with the podcast, maybe I will renege on that or I will have upscaled because I will be in a different place. But for right now, I truly believe you don't need to invest in high tech. You don't need a fancy room. You don't have to hire out a fancy room. You can simply just start with what you've got and then again move forward from there. Now, myth number 4 is that you need to have a big audience or a big following. So, this is not the case. I don't have either of these. Now, when I launched my podcast, I did have a much larger audience. I had maybe about 10, 11,000 followers across Facebook and Instagram. Now, I closed those platforms down because they were growing in a different way, and I didn't feel like the audience I had were the audience that aligned with the business that I now have. So I started again. Instead of sitting there deleting lots of people, I started again. So, why I don't believe that you need these is simply because the whole point of your podcast is to share your words of wisdom and your insight, but it's also to help you grow your audience, right? You're here, this is still a marketing tool. Like, let's not fluff that up. This is still a way in which I get to connect with you, I get to communicate, I get to talk about the problems that I solve and the solutions that I offer. I get to share my worldly wisdom, my life experience. All of these things help people, my audience, gauge who I am, learn who I am, connect with my energy, hear my voice, decide whether, what my experience have been in business and in life connect with what theirs are. And if I've been through an experience that they're wanting help through, and if I'm the right person to help offer them. So I'm still like, whilst I love sharing my podcast to be able to help people, I am still wanting to help more people and use this as a way to be able to grow my audience, to be able to do that. When you invite guests on, that also has the same impact. So when you're inviting a guest on to talk about a like-minded topic, right? Like you're wanting to share this person's energy and wisdom with your audience because you believe that that's going to have it's going to have value to them. Now, on the flip side of that, that person's like wanting to do exactly the same. They love what your show's about, they love what you're about, and they want to be able to encourage their audience to get to know you and listen to the podcast as well. So there's a double whammy there. But what that also does is that it grows your audience tenfold because all of a sudden the two of you are cross networking and you're getting double the amount of eyeballs on a show. And then those people then have the opportunity to come along and connect with you in whatever way they choose to, whether that's through a like or a follow or a message or a website hit or anything like that. Okay, so let's not fluff over that. You don't have to have a big audience to start this. You don't have to have a big audience all of a sudden to start growing, but your podcast will help you grow the audience so that you can help more people. Now, myth number 5 is that you need to plan your full show and record it all first. Now, if that was the case, I don't think many podcasts would actually get off the ground. Now, yes, okay, if we look at people like, I guess, who've got more presence in the world, like, so Meghan Markle to me is coming to mind, love her or hate her, she had a podcast show. Now, I don't know how she launched her podcast and I don't know how she decided to do all of her episodes. Maybe she did them all in one batch. I've got absolutely no idea. She probably did. And for some people, that would really work with their lifestyle. And that's great. And if you're really super structured and you can go ahead and plan all of that, then amazing. And I love that for you. But I know many of us on the side are growing businesses. We've got lives, we've got families. Here we go, everyone. This is as real as it gets. We've got Poppy, who needs a haircut, joining us. We don't all have the time to sit down and record 10 episodes back, like one after the other. I do know that some people do content batching where they might sit down and record multiple at a time, but they don't plan their whole show out. And you don't need to. Like, you don't have to sit there and set a goal and say, I'm going to have 20 episodes. These are the people I want on them. And these are the dates it's all going to go out. And then you start producing that material. Now, for me, I like flexibility. It's important to me. It needs to be sustainable. If it's not sustainable, then it's not going to be able to continue. Uh, if I wanted to make, a plan and have all these guests on, and this was the date that theirs was going to show, but what if that guest wasn't available to talk on the day that I wanted them to talk to me on? And what if they needed some flexibility for me? Does that mean that I wouldn't have them on my show because it doesn't fit my scheduling or my recording criteria? How was that going to impact the production of my show and, helping my audience? So what I recommend instead is having, 3 to 5 recorded at the start. So for me, when I've launched both of my seasons, they've had 3 pre-recorded. That has given me the opportunity to plan those. And it has also given me the opportunity to have some breathing space to then be recording the next. It gives me the opportunity to look at what my launch calendar is to say, okay, well, my podcast episode topics either need to be me or they need to be with somebody else or they need to be focused around a specific topic because that aligns to the season that my business is in at that stage. So behavioral flexibility or podcast flexibility is crucial when you're looking to launch your own and when you're looking to continue to grow it. I would love to say that I've got the next 20 episodes planned out. I definitely don't. I have got a plan. I've got some dates next to them. I've got people I need to contact. But, I definitely don't have it all locked in the second that I launched either of my episodes. So, listeners, they are my top 5 myths that I wanted to debunk. There are so many more that we could go into. And if you've got a question or something that you've heard about podcasting that you're wondering is real, it's not real, you should do it, you shouldn't do it, then please go ahead and send me a message, because I love hearing from you and I would love to help you decide whether podcasting is right for you, or help you grow your audience to your podcast as well. Now, if you're in the space where you are deciding if podcasting is right for you right now, I've got a free resource to help you, and the information for that is in the show notes. It is called Is Podcasting Right for You, or Is It Your Next Big Distraction? Because we all know that sometimes bright and shinies come along. So that's going to help you answer some questions around whether it is suitable for your business, suitable for you, and if you've decided that you want to go ahead or not. Now, if you do decide that podcasting is right for you, then I've also got a podcast launch checklist, which is also in the show notes, which is different to the previous resource. This will help you get a clear understanding on how to go ahead and launch your podcast show. This is based on my own launches, and it will give you some clarity and some direction to help you get started. So as always, I hope that today's episode has given you some clarity. I hope that you've enjoyed our random guest, Poppy Wing Wong is her name. And I hope that you have found this was valuable. Any questions, send them my way. Otherwise, as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thanks so much for being here. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with a friend, colleague, or fellow business owner who might need to hear it as well. And if you'd like a copy of the Client Attraction Method, you can download it via the link in the show notes. I'll see you in the next episode.